This is ZEISS Presents Full Exposure, the weekly resource for news, trends, and the people who influence the world of photography and cinematography. Hosted by veteran photographer and filmmaker Jim Kamp.
The Jacob Burns Film Center, north of New York City, is a hub for cinema education, giving a platform to emerging artists within its creative culture program. Graduate-level students are mentored in developing their storytelling skills, and in recent years, the program and its sponsors have invested in furthering the careers of 22 promising filmmakers. We sat down with Sean Weiner, the director of creative culture and key mentor for the students. Hey, Sean, thanks for having us. It's been really a lot of fun.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, no, it's great to share what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's just so exciting seeing young filmmakers being nurtured the way they are and supported, not just with equipment and facilities, but with somebody like you who just really cares so much about their progress.
Thanks.
Tell us about maybe how you got here and
Sure.
and just the overview of the program and so
Absolutely.
on.
My background is really similar to their backgrounds. Like I spent a number of years, or the better part of a decade, being an independent filmmaker, working with micro-budget shorts, trying to get films out there. And I think that's what sort of put me in a place of being really qualified for understanding exactly what they were going through and finding sort of cheap or smart solutions to making really high quality work and important work. And so that sort of brought me into it, and that coincided with what was going on here at the Jacob Burns Film Center and the idea of expanding what used to be a single fellowship program, so one person per semester, into an 8-person fellowship program.
What was the actual genesis of the program? That single person?
Yeah, I mean, we went through, so we're just about to be 20 years old at the Jacob Burns Film Center, and what happens with nonprofits is that you're always trying to look ahead, and we had a strategic planning period, and one of the things that we really needed to do was up our support for emerging filmmakers, professional filmmakers, because we sort of recognized that there was a gap in that support after college and before somebody gets into the industry. And what we sort of ascertained was that filmmakers who have an in, who have the resources, are able to jump from a film program to being the next great director. And those who don't have that disposable income or don't have that connection spend a lot of time trying to climb up the ranks as a PA, et cetera, and often hit a ceiling and don't get that opportunity. And our belief was that there were actually stories being told by these young filmmakers that filmmakers, even the generation in front of them, weren't telling yet, and that it was important to us to invest in those filmmakers now, give them that platform, and in some cases give them an opportunity that they might not otherwise have. So creative culture in the Burns is able to sort of say, look at this filmmaker's the real thing, this is a great filmmaker, and you'd be lucky to invest in them too. And that's a way that we then become peers with folks like a NYU Tisch, which is an incredible program, but one that takes a lot more resources to attend. So what we're trying to do is create a pathway for filmmakers from any background with any resource level to come in here and receive a stipend, receive the support, receive the gear and the insurance to make films, and kind of expedite their emergence as a director.
And the criteria for them coming into the program is what?
So right now it's loosely post-college. And the truth is that we would gladly look at an applicant who was not able to attend college. That's more looking at a time of life. So we look at folks who are kind of 21 plus, and there's no cap as to how old you can be. It's really looking at people who are saying, I need to take the time right now to dedicate a year to saying, okay, I might have a full-time job, but really my energy is going to be focused in on developing my voice as an artist and creating 2 short films that I can then walk into film festivals with and kind of validate myself as a filmmaker, instead of saying I aspire to be a filmmaker, be able to kind of throw those 2 films on the table and say I am a filmmaker.
And part of the criteria is you have a project that meets the standard of assessment by your panel of who reviews applications.
Yeah, so we have a 12-person committee that reviews the applications. The applications, we recently had close to 100 applications we just actually offered 4 fellowships out this morning for the next semester. Wow. It's always happening. And what we're looking for in a film project is a story that kind of aligns with the theater programming that we do across the street at our art house, which is to say that we support independent film that has a strong message or has social impact, and also kind of wildly creative artistic visions. And so we look for that in films that are animation, that are nonfiction, that are narrative, and in all of those different approaches to storytelling, the element of social impact kind of appears in different ways, right? In a documentary, that might be a strong thing that the film is leading with. In a narrative, it's often buried a little bit under some human experience. So you can sort of find yourself connecting to a person and then realizing that that person's going through something that you might have seen in the headlines, but you never thought about it from an emotional point of view. And then we bring together these 8 people and they're a team. And because they're so wildly different in the types of stories they're telling, they start to stretch each other into really interesting creative places and develop films for one another, with one another, that are so much further beyond what they would have made in a vacuum if they weren't part of the program.
How do you differentiate the program, the creative culture program here, from other programs? I think on the surface, it's specifically shorts, but going beyond that, how is it differentiated?
I think so. The Burns is very lucky to have physical space. And for a long time, being just about 45 minutes north of New York City, felt like it might have put us a little further afield from a community or from this sort of strong community of creatives, though there are many great folks locally as well. But what we've realized is that it actually creates sort of a nearby sanctuary to be able to do work and kind of get away from the noise of everyday life. So I think what the Burns does for emerging filmmakers that a lot of other equally great and important similar initiatives that other organizations don't do is that we put a camera in their hands, we make work, we give them insurance, we really invest in the filmmakers in producing 2 short films. And if you look at other programs, what you'll see is a fellowship program might position somebody as, this is the next filmmaker to watch. They don't necessarily say, and also we're going to work hand in hand with them to produce work. They say they're going to produce work, but you should pay attention to them and we're going to give them a lot of exposure. Or they create financial investment, which is wildly important and which we personally only can do to a certain extent. So what we're doing more than anybody else is saying, this is a continued senior thesis-like experience. You are making a project. You are here every week working with these peers. You're working your project forward, and you can use this space 24/7 and this gear 24/7 to make that project come through. And so that significantly lowers their financial restraints from making work at this point in their life, but it also creates a timeline where a lot of these filmmakers, even your greatest emerging filmmaker, needs a schedule and a series of deadlines to actually hit it and make those films. And so being able to see these filmmakers who are really exciting and largely already there when they apply to the program, produce 2 short films in just 1 year, suddenly kind of puts them in the fast lane. And now they have 2 years of festival films that they could put in, right? They have this ability to say, did I figure it out? I'm getting my name out there, I'm going out there and networking, and I might be just at the precipice of making my first feature film, or just at the precipice of finding that kind of established role within the industry.
Well, you brought up festivals. We talked about that with the guys we just spoke with. They're all very excited about going to Sundance. You're going to Sundance soon, like tomorrow or something.
No, later tonight.
Later tonight. What is it like for them? Is that sort of like when I was talking to Moira, she was saying, it's a little scary, because you're kind of, this is a really nice filmmaking bubble they're in here, But then you get out there into the festivals, you realize, well, this is where people find distribution. This is where people meet people in the business to actually kickstart their career.
Right.
How do you help shepherd them through that process?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's happening at different levels. we are fortunate enough to have 2 short films that have been officially selected by the festival this year, which means that those 2 filmmakers, Matthew Piccini and Crystal Caiza, will have a much different experience than the folks who are going there in more of a networking professional development capacity. And that way, they'll be, in some ways, already shiny folks to talk to upon arrival because they have films in the festival and people want to talk to them and want to hear what they're making next. For the other folks, they're in a space where they're going out there and kind of earning their stripes on like a networking industry level. And so what we've done in here is, in our bubble, is exercise the demons of imposter syndrome, right? And made sure that people understand that they're not somebody who aspires to be a filmmaker, but they're actually filmmakers. But if we're really developing these filmmakers and giving them an opportunity to succeed in the industry, they need to build the muscle of being out there, shaking hands, talking about their next projects, and being out there in the world as filmmakers, as opposed to just being able to say that kind of in the mirror with us, right? And so what we're doing is, and honestly, with the help of ZEISS, we have moments where they'll get press or exposure or have a roundtable discussion or a panel discussion. All these moments where the cameras are on them and they're talking about their process instead of them being behind the camera just telling their stories are moments that they build out a really important element, which is they might make incredible stories one after the other, but they're going to need to be able to walk into a room and say to somebody, why is this really important and why should you invest in it? Or why should you be excited about the next thing I make? So in some ways I'm out there in this like dead mother capacity and I'm just emotional support and I'll buy some peanut butter sandwiches and whatever needs to happen. But in the other way, I feel like I'm just a couple steps ahead of them on that game board, and I am happy to go into a room and talk with people and make connections, and having these filmmakers there and me being able to kind of put some shine on them and saying, oh my God, you have to meet more, you have to talk to Jalena, is a way to kind of put them into those experiences and build their own.
But for the fellows that are going out there that don't have, I mean, it's great. This is the first. I think the first year you said that there's going to be two fellows.
Yeah, we had one last year, and now we have two. So next year we have to get 3.
Yeah, right. That's good. Always upward. But what about the fellows that don't have films in, and you might introduce them to somebody, but I always keep going back, and we've talked before about this. How does their work get seen?
Yeah. Well, so one thing that's great that Sundance offers is something called the Ignite program. And for a select few, those are fellows, and they're the 15 fellows selected to have a year-long mentorship. But at the festival, that opportunity is open to a lot of emerging filmmakers. So Creative Culture has a commitment to bring out our fellows to partake in that, which is a series of professional development opportunities. It might be kind of like a speed dating meeting with a bunch of industry people. It might be panel discussions, pitches, things like that are honestly just as if you were attending a conference for what is it to be a professional filmmaker in the field. So in some ways that kind of like helps put them in the right positions and set up or start prime the pump for those conversations. On the other hand, Creative Culture itself is, I always call it like a really cool band label. And so all of these filmmakers are cool bands that we get to sign, right? So it's our job and my job to kind of be out there, and the fact that within the festival you'll be seeing that logo on the screen to sort of build a reputation of, no, I've heard of that thing. So if I know about that collective or that community, I know that it's operating at a high level of producing good work, then I want to see more stuff coming from there. And so we're in this kind of, if it's collaborative, we're in this space that when Crystal's film becomes the talk of the town in Park City later this week, then those folks, the folks who are really excited about short documentaries, are really excited to see Maya's documentary and Jalena's documentary, right? I want to see more documentary films coming out there. And we've had those conversations with other sort of large institutions of documentary and narrative films, where again, we're kind of an exciting community and they're trusting our curatorial taste, but they're also trusting that when somebody comes through our program, they're professional, they're collaborative and fun to work with, and they're exciting. They're going in an interesting place.
And you're as they say, building your brand, right?
Right. And I think what's nice is like sometimes that stuff feels a little gross. In this case, it feels sort of good because by building the brand, it's one filmmaker supporting the
reputation, and it's great. Well, you are going to help us out and be there on the ground.
I am. I'm going to try to do your job. I'll put on my scarf.
You're going to do much better than that. And thank you so much for having us here. It was really a blast. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing everybody on the ground there and feeling the buzz and everything. It'll be so terrific.
It's going to be great. Thank you for highlighting us, and we'll see you out in Park City.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
We spoke with 3 of the young filmmakers in the Creative Culture Fellowship Program, Jalena Keane-Lee, Moira Fett, and Maya Cueva, about the development of their projects and their skill-sharing experiences at the Burns Media Center. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Thank you very much for having us here. It's really great to be here. It's a great environment, and thank you for your time to be with us. Can you start talking a little bit about how you guys got here? Tell us a little bit about the program and how you got to this stage. For some people that don't know about it, you apply to it with a project that you want to complete. But talk a little bit about where you were before you came here and how you arrived here.
I'll start. So my name is Maya Cueva. I'm originally from Berkeley, California. So that's actually where I was before I came here. But I went to school at Ithaca College, so I studied documentary studies there. I also studied Latino studies, so I feel like a lot of my work really intersects the two. And basically how I found out about the Burns was through a friend who's a former Burns, alumni now. And we're actually co-directing a feature together, and we went to college together. And so she told me about it because she went through the program. And one time when I was visiting here, I was able to check out the classes and everything. And I felt like this was the program that I really wanted to be in. I felt like this was a program that was going to really help me with my filmmaking and as an emerging artist and everything. So that's kind of how I got here, was through her, and then ended up applying here. So,
my name is Moira Fett, and I have a very similar story to Maya. We lead weirdly parallel lives. Essentially, I was studying film at Kenyon College and met a dear friend of mine, Lucy Adams, there, who is a year older than me, and she had found the Burns because she'd grown up in Westchester and just knew about it through coming here for screenings and things like that. Mm-hmm. And so she was a fellow here after she graduated, and we are also directing a feature together as well. And so I just sort of, after graduating, was just figuring things out, and I knew that I wanted to continue to make things. And did you
have a film program at Kenyon?
Yeah, there was a film program, and it was wonderful. But at the same time, it was very different from this experience. It felt like this was a huge step for me, in terms of the support and the really just the production value as well. So it was a big step that I felt really excited about taking after graduating. Post-grad blues, you're a little lost in the world. But coming here was a really wonderful, very grounding opportunity.
My name is Jalena Keane-Lee, and I'm also from Berkeley, California, like Maya, and we went to high school together. And so we are only the, second year of Creative Culture Fellows at the Jacob Burns Film Center. So a lot of us found out about the program through personal connections and people that we really trusted that just advocated and expressed how special this program was or is. But for me, there's a lot of different fellowships, and I feel like I'm always applying to different things, like putting a film into some grant, applying to some fellowship, and luckily, and I'm really grateful that there are a lot of opportunities for young filmmakers and young filmmakers that represent underrepresented communities. So I just kind of applied to this and then went on with my life, and heard back later, and I think a week or so before, Maya had found out that she got in, and I was like, oh my God, I really hope I get in and we can go together. And then we both did, and we moved out to New York, and since then, it's just been such a wonderful experience, and I know that people always throw around the word family when talking about different fellowships and programs, but it really has been so wonderful to have a very familial kind of support here. And for me, the biggest impact that this program has had is just forcing myself to take myself seriously as a director and to call myself a director and filmmaker because I was directing and filmmaking. And because of the timelines of these projects, we are constantly working on our own projects, on each other's projects. And I think that's been like the biggest impact for me.
How young were you guys when you first realized I want to get into film? I mean, when we talked to somebody who was like 12, when she was just like totally in love with it. So when did you guys kind of know this is what you
Who
wanted
remembers
to do?
the exact day?
I don't know the exact day. I mean, well, I started out in radio, actually. So
really?
when I was in high school, so in the Bay Area, there's a youth program called Youth Radio, and that's kind of what I went through in high school and learned radio broadcasting and broadcast journalism and everything. And so through that, I actually got into film, surprisingly, just because I felt like radio is a great medium to try to tell stories, but I felt like through documentary I could actually reach a larger audience. I could, use images to be able to tell these stories. So it was actually through youth radio that I even got to Ithaca, and I felt like it was when I was in college that I realized, like, oh, this is what I want to do.
If I remember correctly, Ithaca is a little more TV and broadcasting focused as far as their comm department.
Yeah, definitely. The documentary studies program had just pretty much opened up when I got there. I think I was like the second year of students who were in the program. So it was fairly new, and I think it's now like expanded. It's probably one of the biggest programs there now, pretty popular. But yeah, it's definitely television, radio heavy, but I definitely wanted to do something different than that.
So did you all kind of feel like you were destined to find something like this to help you grow a project that you when you came out of school, I really want to do a project, but I don't know where I'm going to end up going to do it? Is that sort of, because, when I was doing it, when I was in school, there really wasn't any kind of, other than a graduate program at USC or something like that, there really wasn't any kind of fellowship program like this. So what was it like finding something like this?
I feel like I wouldn't say I felt I was destined for it, just because it has been like such an amazing opportunity that I think I didn't even know like existed for, emerging artists. And I think I was coming from like the film education that I got was not really very like industry heavy. It didn't really prepare us for like what to expect outside of our bubble in rural Ohio. So I definitely was faced with a lot of like anxiety about like, what am I going to do? How am I going to continue to pursue this, art form that I love? So to me, it really wasn't. It was a huge welcome relief, but to find a place, to find this sort of home, where you can feel, very comfortable being where you are at, and trying to figure out like how to grow from there. But yeah, I definitely wasn't really expecting my life to take this turn. It's a beautiful turn.
Well, naturally, not a whole lot of film is not a collaborative process.
Right.
It's very collaborative. So, in school, it isn't always the best environment. You're lucky if you meet somebody that you connect with and collaborate with. But here, it seems like it's really, it's in the DNA of the program that it's. Talk a little bit about what the collaborative process is like here.
Well, I think the program is very aptly named Creative Culture because it really is creating like a culture shift in how media is created and produced, and especially these like pieces of art that we're creating. I would say anyone who's ever been a PA knows that even though it's not really a life or death situation on set, people can treat it as such and be very awful to each other because of that. And I think like we've probably all experienced like some level of uncomfort on some sort of film set at some point, and are familiar with just like this kind of idea of like stealing ideas, like whitewashing stories, like, all these ways that this process can be kind of like weaponized and seen as zero sum. But this program and the environment that it creates and all of us that come out of this are really conditioned with the idea that things are better if we all work on them together. and how important it is to see your friend's work, not only when it's finished, but when it's like just starting, and see how different things progress and develop, and be there for that person as they're making these like small choices, and how important it is to have that community even beyond this program, because you know it only goes so long, but to still have people that you reach out to send your early cuts, your fine cuts, the things that you might be kind of embarrassed about, but you still need to know like how people feel about them. So I think it's really emphasized that importance, and how if you have a community that's willing to come shoot with you in whatever weather, as we really learned like this past semester, like any time of day, that can really make all the difference, especially when you don't have tons of funds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What about the professional community? What's the involvement like as far as mentorship? You know, we're gonna talk to Sean a little bit later, but what outside of the program, the kind of professional liaisons do you have? People coming to lecture, or any hands-on stuff, anything like that?
We always have people coming through. I feel like we, we'll have like producers come in and help you with any questions that you have regarding, that aspect of filmmaking, or, like a cinematographer come in and really just bringing in people from that are in the industry, that are working, to come in and, answer any questions that you have that you may not have the opportunity to ask so casually otherwise. And then we also this isn't really answering your question, but we also do a lot of skill shares where we can teach one another these skills that we've gathered thus far in our lives.
How does that work?
Well, we each have to do one skill share per semester, I guess, and you can basically, for example, I did my first one on droning, because that is something that I do as a hobby.
It was so cool. Favorite skill share.
Droning.
Drone, yeah. It was unusual. I feel like.
She's a certified drone pilot. If anyone needs drone work,
yeah, please.
hit up Moira.
And then this semester I did art direction, and I brought in the art director that I used for my first film because it was heavily art directed, and so it's good because I've learned so many things that I, even just like practical things like distribution and like how to really navigate this world.
I mean the whole festival thing is a whole nother thing, right? So. As far as distribution, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And
also, Burns has other fellows that come in and other programs, and one that's been really a standout for me is they have the Greenhouse Fellowship, and that brings in filmmakers from the Middle East and North Africa. Is that right, someone? Okay, yes, the Middle East and North Africa. And so those filmmakers are here for like a few weeks or a few months, so we really get to hang out with them and build friendships with them. And so those are people that are like a bit more mid-career, maybe working on their first or second feature. And so to have those relationships with people that are kind of coming up in the same field as you is really a great opportunity.
Oh, cool. So let's talk a little bit about your projects. When I first talked to Sean, I didn't really know much about the mechanics of it. So you actually have two sets of fellows here that sort of overlap, right? So explain a little bit about that and get how that works in getting your project done.
Yeah, so usually it starts with one set of us, and then we go through how many months? 4 months? It's like a 4 month.
It feels like forever.
Yeah, I think it's 4 months, and then a new set of fellows come in. So the three of us were all part of like the same cohort of fellows, I guess. And then now there's a new set and we're about to finish actually our fellowship come March, basically, once the next screening is. And then the set of fellows now will have their kind of second semester as well. So we overlap for a time period, but then some people leave.
And it's like 3 or 4 months we meet once a week and come here once a week, and that's for like production to post of like a fine cut, rough cut, and then we have a panel review, and then there's a break for like a month or 2 months or a month and a half, some time frame, and then there's a screening and the projects are like unveiled, and then you also start the next round.
What's the review like?
The panel
review. So fresh. We just had ours, so we're
Brutally honest?
Yeah.
Is it basically brutally honest, or?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I think it's kind of what you make out of what you get out of it, really. But it's really helpful. So basically, there's like maybe 4 or 5 industry members that come. We had someone from POV, we had someone from Tribeca, some other folks here. So what they do is they'll watch all of our rough cuts, and then we have kind of a conversation afterwards, and each of them give their feedback. They kind of talk about like what's working, what isn't working, and each of us have questions for our particular films too, which is super helpful. So you really get that hands-on, feedback from someone who is in the industry and kind of knows how to navigate the festival circuit or what is programmable, but even beyond that, just what makes a good story. So I think that's.
Is it sometimes
really
hard to take? Sometimes you hear things like, oh, maybe you find something that's like, oh yeah, that's a really good point, and then you might find something that's like, that didn't seem quite. You kind of draw the line someplace at what the critique is like.
Great things about this program and about the collaborative aspect is like we've been getting feedback since day one about the projects. Yeah. So of course it's different when it's coming from an industry professional, but I think that's not the environment in terms of culture of the review. It's like very collegiate, and we have dinner with them, and so it's not like this really serious thing where we feel like we're up against like a trial or something like that. They're really nice, and like we know that they want the best for the projects and have like really good intentions, so it's really valuable. And getting to respond to them, because I feel like sometimes, like a lot of times with projects, you get notes from people and then that's kind of it, but to get notes from them and to be like, okay, but like here are the reasons that is tricky, or like here are the other things that I'm dealing with, and to be able to have a dialogue is really, really valuable.
Cool.
It's also helpful because like at that point you've been in your edit suite, basically like haven't seen sunlight for like a couple weeks, and like we're so in it. We're all so involved in each other's projects, like, and so aware of the stories that this is really the first time that you are showing a group of people that know nothing about it going into it, which I feel like for my work has been very helpful, because I feel like I'm oftentimes in these spaces of like ambiguity or like not disclosing all the information. And so just to have a group of people be like, so like what was that thing that you did? Like what was going on? And like raise those questions is really helpful for me to know like what's working and what's not unclear.
I want to talk about I want to have time to talk about your individual projects. But speaking of your project, and can you mention? Can you think of a time where you got a piece of that critique that you kind of missed, or you thought that, wow, that's a really good point, and it really helped you in re-edit and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's see. So, I guess for our most recent panel, I was sort of going into it not really. I had shown a couple people, and basically the story is about a moment of intimacy shared between these 2 students at an all-girls school who, but the environment is a little bit otherworldly in that they're always being surveilled with using body cameras, just to give you the brief overview. And
is this sort of a dystopian projection?
A little, slight, yeah. It's some Handmaid's Tale
basically
vibes.
real life.
Okay. Yeah. So, I guess I went into that evening the other night, not really knowing if that moment of intimacy where they kiss is clear or not, because some people in a previous edit had told me, because it takes place off camera, that it was unclear, which is sort of like the main thing. Like you have to know that happens in order to get the rest of the story. So when I showed it the other night, they did say that it was clear. One note that I got that was really helpful was that the counselor who sort of represents all that is oppressive in this world was more threatening if you didn't ever see her, if she was sort of this disembodied voice. And I think that was a moment that, when you're so deep in an edit, you don't really see those kinds of possibilities of like, oh wait, I mean, to her dismay, I feel very sorry. She was a great actress, but like to have to be opened up to the idea of like, you know, maybe it's a little more powerful to not have to see this sort of omnipresent looming figure.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a really helpful note that I received.
So on your project, what stage are you at with it now? And you've given a little bit of setup, but you know, tell us a little bit more about it and where you're at.
Right. Where I'm at right now is it's a rough cut still. I still have to do a lot of audio work, and I'm gonna do some scoring, some tweaking of the edit
You're all
as
shot,
well.
though. Everything's all shot.
Everything is shot.
Yep. No reshoots or anything.
Yeah. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Never liked to call a patient.
The title?
Yeah. The title is Practice. And it was a really fun story for me to write. I felt like it more so than the previous project I did, Two Birds, was drawing upon personal experience. I grew up and went to an all-girls private school. We did not wear body cameras, but I felt like even so I was still sort of excavating my memories and my personal experience and the experiences of those of my peers, and so I think it was actually a lot of fun. This whole process, really, a little bit of pain, but a lot of fun.
Well, you wrote from something that you knew of.
Yeah.
Something you wanted to excavate, maybe.
Yeah.
And, you know. So and practice is the theme is what is it? Is it similar type of theme you were saying?
To Two Birds, or
Well, yeah, the all girls. It's the all girls.
oh yeah,
school.
so it does take place in an all girls school, and you know the theme. It is sort of in a weird way this like coming of age story and trying to you know navigate this world where it's very like oppressive and stifling of you know the development of this adolescent identity, and I think a huge theme is the idea of like you know emerging sexuality in young girls and the sort of shame that comes along with that.
What did you have in mind as far as a visual style for it?
I wanted it to be kind of austere in a way, like a little bit removed. We did an interesting thing that I had never done in any of my other films, where I did some zoom shots, some slow zooms, and sort of creating a collapsing feeling of space, the walls sort of closing in around you.
You mean like a zoom and a dolly type movement?
No, like
in
a
one,
literal,
or a literal,
not
a
a
manual,
zoom and a dolly,
manual
just a
zoom.
manual zoom. But yeah, I think in general I was hoping to go for like longer takes, and a bit more of a voyeuristic feeling.
Is it set in some time in the future, or?
It's a bit of an alternate reality type of a situation. I like, I'm a fan of stories that are set in an environment that is very familiar in all ways, but sort of one. And it just gives you a bit of like an unsettling, otherworldly vibe. So yeah.
And when do you expect to be complete?
Well, I will have to be by March. Is it 28th?
28th,
yeah.
You have to do a sort of deadline,
it's
right?
good to have a hard,
Firm
a
deadline.
hard
Stop.
deadline.
It's definitely helpful.
But I think for the time being, I have some tweaks I'm going to make, and then I'm going to let it sit for maybe a week or two. When I get back from Sundance, because we're all going together, I'm going to get back into the weeds with it.
So Maya. Maya, let's talk about your project.
Yeah, okay. So my project is a documentary, basically a portrait documentary following an undocumented activist, Alejandra Pablos, who is fighting for political asylum.
So basically, I've been following her and her case for a while now. The story actually started as a radio feature. So she is someone who is very complicated because she has been actually in a detention center twice. So she's been detained twice already. And she's kind of been fighting for her freedom for a long time.
You found out about the story from a radio story that you heard?
Yes. So no, actually, I created her.
Oh,
sorry,
you
it's
did?
a little
Oh, wow.
confusing. I did a radio feature for Latino USA. It's a show on NPR. And it was following her while she was still in the detention center in Eloy in Arizona. So from there, after I was done with that, I felt that this would be perfect to translate into a film. So it actually, that's how it became the
What are the
second
logistics
film.
of doing that? Is she in detention?
So she's actually released now from the detention center. So now she's fighting for political asylum. And so I've been following her case. So the documentary is really following her story, but also the arc of her case.
Were you able to visit her when she was in detention?
No, I did talk to her on the phone though. So that's kind of when we first started communicating and everything and building a relationship. But I really started filming her when she was released already. Yeah, so the story really kind of picked up from her being released from the detention center to her fighting for political asylum and what happens.
And where are you? What stage are you at with the project?
So I am also in a rough cut as well. All of the production is done, so her case already happened and everything. So now it's just kind of fine-tuning, editing, and getting it into the best shape possible for the screening that's happening. And then the hope from there is just seeing where it can go. We think, I've been communicating with her as well and kind of thinking about creating impact campaigns around it just because, her story really needs a lot of attention. And it's definitely one that, there needs to be a lot of advocacy around. So it's important that we kind of try to create some kind of campaign around it so people can see it and see what's happening
What's
now.
the title or the working title?
Yeah, I'm still working on the title.
Oh, okay.
But
Working title is working title.
yeah, working title is working title, but I'm hoping that it comes to me. I've been thinking about calling it like Being Ale, because her name's Alejandra, but yeah, I'm trying to still figure that part out.
What about let's talk just briefly about your project, Only the Moon.
Yeah, so Only the Moon, Solamente la Luna, is the Spanish title. It's following my dad's immigration story from Peru to here. So it's really looking at, so it's an animated documentary as well, which is something that I've always wanted to be able to make. And I'm just so happy that I was given the opportunity.
Had you seen any animated docs before this?
Yes, I have. And one of my favorites is actually Tower. I don't know if you've heard of the one. It's about the 1966, it's like the first school shooting in Austin, Texas.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
at UT Austin. So that was something that also really, I've seen other animated docs as well, but seeing that, I saw it at South by in 2016 when it premiered. And it's a feature-length animated doc that's like completely rotoscoped. They had to reenact, they shot everything and reenacted everything, and then they rotoscoped over that. Like, this is incredible. It's like an incredible way to be able to do storytelling, right? Especially when things are kind of biographical, right? And it's history. We don't really have that footage. Like, how do we reimagine this? And so that's something that I really wanted to create for my father's story, because he is someone who kind of always talks about his past in this sort of very whimsical way, and he doesn't. It always felt like an illustrated storybook to me. When he would talk to me, I grew up hearing his stories over and over again, so I have them memorized basically. But when he would talk to me about them, even when I was younger, when I was a child, I really would always imagine them being part of like a book or something that you would read. So I always really wanted to create a story that, would kind of capture his memories in that way, but then reimagining them coming from myself, from
sounds beautiful.
His, daughter.
Really does.
So I was able to work with an animator on that. So what I did was really kind of storyboard the scenes for her, and then we would work together on how they would look. And she's amazing. Her name is Leah Nichols, and she's actually based in the Bay Area as well. So that's kind of where we got connected before I came here. And then we just worked on everything remotely, which was really exciting and intense. So that is actually got me into the Sundance Ignite program. as a fellow. So that's what I submitted as my project.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, so the Sundance Ignite program is basically for emerging filmmakers from 18 to 24. And so it's people who, are really starting off in their career, and what it gives you if you get into the program is you get a all expense paid trip to Sundance, as well as a mentor who's in the industry. So someone who can really, an already experienced filmmaker who might, if you're a doc filmmaker, they may be in doc, or they may be in narrative, depending on, what you're working on in film. And they can kind of give you pointers and help you with industry, navigating the industry, and just kind of anything that you really need help with. They're kind of there
Super cool.
Yeah, so it's really cool. And it's awesome because it's sort of an extension of the Burns in a way, just because, we have Sean here, who's super incredible, but to also have someone else too that could kind of help.
How many do they accept?
So I believe it's 15 of us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's a nice group, not too big, yeah.
So I think the submission pool is about 1,500 people. So you submit it to a challenge, which is on Project 1324 on Adobe. And then from there, they kind of select who they think would be the finalists. And then, it goes on. I hope I'm explaining it in the best way. But yeah.
Sounds really exciting.
Yeah, so I'm going to Sundance for the first time in a couple of days on next Monday. So I'm excited.
Well, we will try to catch up to you there in the amidst the frenzy of the festival.
Yeah.
So that sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Your turn.
Okay, where should we begin? My current project at the Burns is called Standing Above the Clouds, and it is about the mother-daughter, grandmother relationships that are fueling the Kukia'i Mauna movement on the Big Island of Hawaii, which is a movement to stand for Mauna Kea, which is the highest mountain from the sea level in the world. It stands at 14,000 feet, and in Hawaiian culture it's seen as the portal to the heavens and one of the most sacred places on the entire earth. And because it's so high, and it literally does stand above the clouds, which is why we named the film that, it's also a really great place for astronomy and for seeing the stars. And there's 13 telescopes that are there now, and for the past decade, a 30-meter telescope has been proposed, and a consortium of 6 countries has been attempting to build it on the mountain. And so these women have been standing both kind of Standing Rock style, living up on the mountain, blocking construction tanks with their bodies, and doing that kind of frontline activism, and a elongated court proceeding, and then carrying on with the spirit and the intention of the Mauna in their everyday life and in the way that they treat the people around them. So it's about that, and about how their relationships between each other and between their families have strengthened and developed through their time standing for the mountain.
How did you get on that project? How did that land with you?
I have an auntie that lives on the Big Island, and so she was telling me about it. In 2015, when the standoffs were happening and there were construction vehicles up there and stuff like that, it got a little news blip. Like, there's some famous people that were posting Stand for Mauna Kea, like Jason Momoa is one of the most notable ones. He's like very for the Mauna, and everyone in Hawaii loves him. And there's like all these different news items about it, and then I didn't really hear anything about it after that. So once I graduated from college, I really wanted to invest into this story and see what was going on. And then Burns gave the perfect opportunity to kind of use these new frameworks and tools that I had gained here about what it means to be a director, to be a DP, to be crafting a story, and apply that to the project.
Are you shooting as well?
Yeah.
So what is that like logistically? It's not exactly, a Metro North stop away,
Oh my God, you mean getting to Hawaii?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, if it was a Metro North stop away, my life would be so much easier.
It's gotta be tough.
So when we were talking about the structure of the program, there's a break, kind of like a summer break or a semester break type thing between the sessions. And so during that time, it was in the summer. And so I did a 3-week production trip to Hawaii in August. And then I just returned from one kind of over winter break in January.
Wow. And where are you at in that whole in the process of that?
Well, we have a rough cut, but with the documentary, timelines can be very much out of especially the filmmakers' control. In
Right.
this case, they're very out of the subject's control as well. So the permit for the telescope got reapproved in November, and with this new fiscal year, they can start construction at any time. So all the activists are really prepped. When we were just there in January, they were all saying, you know, if we have to go up, I hope that you'll be there with us.
Wow.
And so, of course, we would very much like to be there with us. So just trying to now figure out anything that we can do to prep, to get, you know, logistics together and just be ready for that if and when it happens.
And tell us about your first project.
My first project is a character-driven documentary about Nadia Okamoto, who's 20 years old, and she's living in New York right now. So the commute is a lot easier. She lives in Williamsburg and I live in Bushwick, so it's like not bad at all.
Not too bad.
Yeah. And she founded a nonprofit called Period that provides free period supplies to homeless people across the country through using youth leadership and youth activism. So there's campus chapters at middle schools and high schools and colleges, and then young people get together and package period supplies into these like different packs that last for one menstrual cycle and have a variety of different products so people can have options and then deliver them to local shelters. And she started it when she was briefly without a home with her family in Portland and learned from women that had been in that situation a lot longer about what an unaddressed need this was and about how addressing your period was the hardest part for them, about living at or below the poverty line. And it's such a, in the realm of the issues that we're facing today, it's such a solvable solution. Like people need these supplies, the supplies are there, we just need to get them to them. And so she does a lot of work around not only getting people the supplies, pushing for legislative change that is some of the reasons that these products are so expensive and so inaccessible, and then also pushing for cultural change and breaking down the stigma around periods.
So, guys, you know, you're going to the festival. You know, we talked a little bit about Ignite and so forth. What do you anticipate? I mean, you've been once before, right? But what do you anticipate it's like, and what was it like for your first project? Fielding it, going to festivals that you did, and what do you anticipate it to be like at one of the biggest festivals in the world, probably?
Well, I don't know what to expect, truthfully. I actually haven't gone through the process of submitting my first project
Oh, you have not?
to any festivals because, really just because it was coming off the heels of that one. I was already doing that.
The next one.
And it seemed like suddenly all my time had
Gone away.
slipped away. So I'm actually really excited. This will be one of the first experiences that I have at a film festival, especially of this scale. So I'm hoping really just to see some great movies, meet some good people, hopefully not get sick.
But I mean, you know, I think probably one of the issues, especially when you're making shorts, is getting people to see them.
Yeah.
You know, how does Burns and how do you guys work together to try to get your work seen more?
Well,
You know, there's so many venues. You know, there's so many. You know, Netflix on down. There's, you know, the New York Times has. You know, a lot of them do. You know? But yeah, what do they do to help you, or what do you do to help yourselves to get your work seen more?
well, Burns has a lot of great resources, and I feel like we haven't talked that much about Sean, but he's like really the reason that we come 2 hours from Brooklyn to come here for this program, and he's really a very hands-on mentor every step of the way. So we have the industry people coming for the screenings and for the more final things when they're more polished, but Sean is really there, like looking through all your footage with you if you want, or like rearranging things on the timeline, or helping you plan your shot list and all that kind of stuff along the way. So that's really, really helpful, and that extends to finding the best post-production partners and things like that. But I think it's, you know, just as these fellowships for emerging filmmakers are coming up kind of recently, I think there's also a newfound industry-wide appreciation for short films, especially as people's attention spans, particularly people even younger than us, are getting shorter and shorter, that maybe a feature film won't even be as appealing anymore.
Yeah, I've been told, some people said that our show should be more of a
More of a short.
runtime, more of a short.
I think something else that's happening, and this is to Sean's credit as well, the Burns is that we're creating connections with other, with OpDocs. We had Death Metal Grandma, which Leah Gallant, who's a former fellow, a creative culture fellow, that was her short, and hers ended up being on an OpDoc. So that, went viral and, got her a lot of views on that. So just creating those kind of connections as well, and some, connections with the topic, having some of these panel members come who are from POV. POV just started a shorts program, so they're kind of looking at
You're talking about the PBS POV?
PBS, yeah. So they're kind of looking at, what we're creating as well. So all of that is helpful just down the line to try to see if we can make the connection or see if we can get our stuff on there.
Yeah. I really love talking to you guys. I wish you a lot of luck and fun
Thank
in
you.
Sundance. Don't forget your water and snacks.
Yeah.
Right? And we will be there in spirit and with cameras. And Sean will be there too, and I think we're going to deputize Sean to grab you guys when he can at the professional development, and a couple of the other fellows who have films in the festival, and we'll catch you again soon.
Looking forward to it.
And thank you so much for having us on and for highlighting our stories and the work that we're doing.
Thank you for having us here. It's really been looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us next time for another edition of ZEISS Full Exposure. If you can't watch, you can always catch the audio-only version on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at ZEISS_full exposure or on the web at ZEISSfullexposure.com. And to learn more about the latest in ZEISS lenses, head to ZEISS.com.